L had observed 17 different species in his long career as an archival collector. He had watched civilizations rise from primitive worlds, struggle with faster-than-light travel, and eventually find their place among the stars. Most species followed predictable patterns. They were either aggressive or peaceful, logical or emotional, individualistic or collective. Understanding them took time, but it was always possible. Then came the humans. The Galactic Assembly chamber buzzed with the usual mix of sounds as 47 different species gathered for the welcoming ceremony. L floated near the observation platform, his recording devices active, ready to document humanity's introduction to galactic society. The humans had passed all the standard tests. They had developed faster-than-light travel on their own. They had stable governments. They understood basic mathematics and physics. They seemed ready. Captain Sung entered first, leading the human delegation. He was tall by human standards, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Behind him came Dr. HFY, a woman with a warm smile that never quite left her face, an ambassador, an older man who carried himself with quiet dignity. The ceremony began as always. The assembly speaker, a towering with 4 arms, welcomed the humans in the traditional way. He spoke of unity, cooperation, and the shared future of all thinking beings. L had heard this speech dozens of times. It never changed much. What happened next, however, was not traditional at all. Ambassador thanked the assembly for their welcome. Then, instead of accepting his place quietly as most new species did, he asked a question. "We have read your histories," said, his voice calm but carrying clearly through the chamber. "We see that 23 of the species here once fought wars against each other. Some of those wars happened recently. How do you maintain peace now?" The chamber fell silent. It was not a rude question exactly, but it was direct in a way that made several species uncomfortable. The speaker's facial tendrils twitched with surprise. We have learned to move beyond conflict," the speaker said carefully. "We focus on trade and mutual benefit." Dr. HFY leaned forward. "But what about disagreements? What about resources? What about old grudges?" L made a note in his records. Humans asked uncomfortable questions. They did not simply accept what they were told. They wanted to understand the mechanisms beneath the surface. Over the following weeks, L shadowed the human delegation as they met with various species representatives. He watched HFY spend hours with them, asking about their hive society. He saw Captain Sung studying military vessels in the public docking bays, clearly analyzing their designs and capabilities. He observed Ambassador meeting with the peaceful, discussing philosophy and ethics late into the station's night cycle. The humans were everywhere, learning everything, talking to everyone. Other species found it exhausting. "They never stop," complained a merchant to L one day. "I explained our trade networks to the human HFY. She asked 37 questions. 37. Why do they need to know so much detail?" L had no answer, but he was beginning to see a pattern. Humans were not content with surface knowledge. They wanted to understand completely. They wanted to know not just what, but why and how. Then came the incident with the archives. The assembly maintained vast historical records, open to all member species. But certain sections were restricted, containing information about ancient wars, extinct species, and dangerous technologies. These sections required special clearance. Captain Sung's crew somehow accessed them anyway. When confronted, Sung looked genuinely confused. "The security protocols had weaknesses," he explained. "We thought it was a test. We wanted to see if we could identify the vulnerabilities in your system. We were going to report them." The assembly was not sure whether to be angry or impressed. Humans, it seemed, pushed boundaries instinctively. They tested limits. They found gaps and explored them, not from malice but from curiosity. L updated his records again. Humans were problem solvers. They saw challenges everywhere, even where none were intended. The real tension began when the Dominion arrived. The Dominion controlled 17 star systems and considered themselves the Assembly's military power. They were a warrior culture, believing that strength determined worth. Their representative, Commander N, was a massive creature covered in natural armor plating, with 4 eyes that gleamed with constant evaluation, and looked at the human delegation with open contempt. "So these are the new children," he rumbled. "Small, weak, soft skin. How did such fragile creatures survive long enough to reach the stars?" Ambassador met N's gaze without flinching. "We survived the same way your species probably did, Commander, through determination, intelligence, and the ability to adapt to challenges. My species survived through strength and slammed a limb against the floor. We conquered our predators. We fought our way to dominance. What have you conquered?" Dr. Haywan spoke up, her voice calm. "We conquered extinction 6 times, ice ages, volcanic winters, plagues, asteroid impacts, resource collapse. Our planet tried to kill us in every way possible. We survived them all." And snorted, "Survival is not glory. Can you fight? Can you defend yourselves?" "We can," Captain Sung said quietly. "We prefer not to. There is a difference. Preference is luxury," and said. "Weakness is reality. You value individual lives too much. I see it in your records. You mourn your dead. You hesitate to sacrifice. This makes you vulnerable." Ambassador stepped forward. "Let me tell you about humanity, Commander. On our world, we evolved as persistence hunters. We were not the strongest or the fastest, but we could outlast anything. We would chase prey for days, never stopping, never giving up. Eventually, our prey would collapse from exhaustion, and we would still be running." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We also evolved as social creatures. We formed tribes, then villages, then cities, then nations. We learned that cooperation made us stronger than any individual could be. We built wonders together. We also fought terrible wars. We know conflict intimately." "Then you understand strength," and said. "We understand survival," corrected. "And we learned something important through our long history. The strong do not always survive. The adaptable do. The ones who learn, who change, who never give up no matter how bad things become. That is humanity." And studied the ambassador for a long moment. Then he turned away. "Pretty words. Let us hope you never need to back them with action." The Dominion delegation left. The chamber slowly returned to normal, but El felt something shift. He looked at the humans with new interest. They spoke of war and peace with equal familiarity. They claimed to value life but understood death. They appeared soft but described themselves as survivors. He added a new line to his records. "They speak of war as naturally as they speak of peace. Curious." 2 months later, the news arrived. The Dominion had blockaded 5, a human colony world on the edge of disputed space. The Dominion claimed the system belonged to them under ancient treaties. They demanded the humans evacuate immediately or face consequences. The Assembly expected humanity to negotiate, to compromise, to avoid conflict as any sensible species would. They were, after all, new to galactic politics. They had no allies, no military power, no reason to believe they could stand against the Dominion. El received new orders. Document the predictable outcome. Record how humanity would learn to bend to stronger powers, as all young species eventually did. He traveled to 5, expecting to witness a retreat. What he found instead would change everything. He thought he understood about the members of the galactic community. 5 was a small colony world, home to 50,000 humans. It had farms, mines, and research stations. Nothing special. Nothing worth fighting over, in L's opinion. The Dominion blockade consisted of 12 warships, enough firepower to destroy the planet's surface 3 times over. The colony had no military vessels, no weapons platforms, no shields capable of stopping orbital bombardment. Commander and sent a message to the surface. You have 3 days to evacuate. After that, we will claim this world by force. Resist and you will die. This is the way of the universe. L positioned his observation ship in a safe location and waited for the evacuation to begin. He had seen this before. Weaker species always retreated when faced with overwhelming force. It was logical. It was survival. The humans did not evacuate. Instead, Colonel Wu, the colony's defense coordinator, sent a reply. "This world is our home. We will not leave." L checked his translation devices. Perhaps he had misunderstood, but no, the message was clear. The humans were refusing to leave. The Dominion seemed equally surprised and sent another message. "You cannot fight us. Your people will die. Is pride worth their lives?" Wu's response came quickly. "Is this world worth yours?" What happened over the next 3 days fascinated L more than anything he had witnessed in his entire career. The humans did not panic. They did not argue about leaving. Instead, they went to work. Every able-bodied colonist reported to defense positions. Farmers became soldiers. Scientists became engineers. Teachers became medics. Even children helped, carrying supplies and organizing resources. An engineer named Dong led a team that converted mining equipment into weapons. Drilling lasers became anti-ship guns. Industrial haulers became makeshift armor. Construction robots were for combat. L watched in amazement as the colonists transformed their entire settlement in 72 hours. They dug tunnels. They built bunkers. They created supply caches and fallback positions. They worked with a coordination that seemed impossible for beings who claimed to value individual choice. But what struck L most was how they maintained morale. Every 6 hours, the colonists stopped for what they called social time. They ate together. They sang songs. They told stories. They laughed and joked and shared memories. Colonel Wu enforced this schedule strictly. Anyone who worked too long without rest was ordered to stop. "Why do they waste energy on such things?" asked another observer from the species. "They should focus entirely on defense." L had no answer, but he kept watching. When the 3 days ended, the Dominion attacked. Admiral Wu Jin commanded what the humans called the Earth Defense Fleet. He had 6 small ships against the Dominion's 12 large ones. By any logical calculation, he should have retreated or surrendered. He did neither. Wu Jin's ships moved in ways L had never seen before. They did not fight in formation. They did not follow predictable patterns. Each ship acted independently, making split-second decisions that made no sense individually but somehow worked together. One human ship flew straight at a Dominion cruiser, broadcasting a distress signal. The Dominion fired, expecting an easy kill. At the last moment, the human ship dodged and released a cloud of sensor-blocking chaff. The Dominion's weapons hit empty space while the human ship escaped. Another human vessel pretended to have engine failure. It drifted, seemingly helpless. When a Dominion ship approached to finish it off, the disabled human ship suddenly activated hidden weapons and damaged its attacker before fleeing. The humans used tricks. They used deception. They used what other species would call dishonorable tactics. And it worked. After the first engagement, the Dominion had lost 2 ships and suffered damage to 3 others. The humans had lost 1 ship, but its crew had evacuated in escape pods, and the other human ships had rescued them all. And was furious. "Fight with honor," he broadcast to Wu Jin. The admiral's response was simple. "We fight to survive. Honor is a luxury." The blockade continued, but now the Dominion was cautious. They could not predict what the humans would do next. Every engagement was different. Every human ship fought with its own style. There were no patterns to study, no tactics to counter. On the ground, Colonel Wu held the colony together through sheer force of will and careful planning. When supplies ran low, the colonists rationed. When morale dipped, they gathered to sing and share stories. When people grew tired, Wu enforced mandatory rest periods. A young colonist named started recording daily video messages. She was only 15, but she spoke with the clarity of someone much older. "Today is day 12 of the blockade," she said to the camera. "We're hungry, we're tired, we're scared, but we're still here. My mother says humans have a saying, we didn't come this far to give up now. I think about that a lot. Our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They went a space in metal tubes, and we're their children, so we'll survive this too." Her videos spread across the galactic network. Other species watched in fascination. Here was a child facing death from orbital bombardment, and she spoke of survival with absolute certainty. The observer asked Elle, "Why are they like this? Why do they not accept their fate?" Elle considered the question. "I think," he said slowly, "that they do not believe in fate, they believe in choice." On day 20, the Dominion tried a new strategy. They sent special forces to the surface to capture key positions. It should have worked. The Dominion soldiers were trained warriors, each worth 10 human soldiers in combat. But the humans did not fight fair. They used traps, they used ambushes, they used the terrain itself as a weapon. Dominion soldiers found themselves fighting enemies who appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and disappeared before they could respond. Dong's team had rigged the entire colony with improvised explosives, false corridors, and hidden positions. The Dominion soldiers felt like they were fighting ghosts. Colonel Wu commanded the defense with what humans called adaptive tactics. There was no grand strategy. Instead, each unit made its own decisions based on the immediate situation. When the Dominion expected an attack from one direction, it came from 3 others. When they fortified a position, the humans simply went around it. The Dominion, their ground forces after losing half of them, and was learning what Elle had already begun to understand. Humans did not follow the rules other species expected. By day 30, the Dominion had lost 5 ships. The blockade remained, but it was no longer absolute. Human ships slipped through regularly, bringing supplies and taking out refugees who chose to leave. Most colonists stayed. The Galactic Assembly watched with growing concern. This situation was supposed to be simple. The Dominion would claim the world, the humans would leave, and everything would return to normal. Instead, humans were fighting and dying for a single small planet. "They are being irrational," the Assembly speaker declared. "One world is not worth this cost." Ambassador responded from Earth. "Every world is worth defending. Every life is worth protecting. If we abandon our people now, what message does that send? That humans can be threatened into submission, that our word means nothing, that our colonies are temporary." He paused, then continued. "No, we will not abandon 5. If the Dominion wants that world, they will pay for every meter of it in blood and treasure." And decided to end the stalemate. He ordered his remaining ships to begin orbital bombardment, not enough to destroy the planet, but enough to force surrender. The first missiles launched. Admiral Wu Jin ordered his ships to intercept. They could not stop all the missiles, but they would try. As Dominion weapons fell toward 5, human ships threw themselves in the way, sacrificing themselves to protect the planet below. It was magnificent and terrible. The Assembly did nothing. They claimed non-interference in territorial disputes. They watched as the species and their community faced extermination. That was when Earth itself responded. Every human world mobilized. Every ship capable of faster-than-light travel began moving toward 5. The Earth government sent a message to the Galactic Assembly and to the Dominion. "We are humanity. You have blockaded our world. You have killed our people. You have forced us to this point. We did not want this. We hoped for peace, but we will not abandon our own. As of this moment, a state of war exists between humanity and the Dominion. We will fight until 5 is free or until we have nothing left to fight with." Elle read the message 3 times. War. Humanity was declaring war on the Dominion. A species that had been part of the galactic community for less than a year was challenging one of the most powerful military forces in known space. It was insane. It was terrifying. It was the most human thing Elle had ever witnessed. The galaxy held its breath and watched as the species marched toward a conflict they could not possibly win. But Elle was beginning to suspect that winning and surviving might mean different things to humans than to other species. He updated his records once more. They do not fight to win. They fight because they refuse to lose. I do not yet understand the difference, but I sense it is important. The war began badly for humanity. In the first month, they lost 12 ships and 3 outposts. The Dominion had more ships, better weapons, and centuries of military experience. Every tactical analysis predicted human defeat within 6 months. The analysts were wrong. General 1 took command of human military operations from a converted station near Mars. She was a compact woman within her hair and eyes that never seemed to rest. Elle observed her command center, noting how different it was from other military operations he had witnessed. There was no grand strategy board, no detailed battle plans. Instead, one had dozens of screens showing real-time data from every front. She watched, analyzed, and gave orders that seemed to change minute by minute. "Doctrine of chaos," she explained when a visiting diplomat expressed confusion. "We cannot predict what the enemy will do, so we do not try. Instead, we react faster than they can plan." The Dominion learned this the hard way. In the Battle of New Jakarta, Dominion forces expected a conventional engagement. They positioned their heavy cruisers in standard formation, their lighter ships on the flanks. They had run simulations. They knew what to expect. The humans did something completely different. Captain 1 led a squadron of small, fast ships directly at the Dominion center. The Dominion prepared to destroy them easily. Then the human ships split apart in 12 different directions, each following a unique path that seemed random but somehow avoided every weapon lock. While the Dominion's attention followed one squadron, 3 other human groups attacked from angles the Dominion had left undefended. By the time the Dominion realized what was happening, they had lost 6 ships and their formation was broken. They fight without order and complain to the assembly. "Every ship acts independently. How can we predict chaos?" But it was not chaos, Elle realized. It was controlled freedom. Each human commander made their own decisions, but they all worked toward the same goal. They adapted to changing situations in real time while other species needed to consult command structures and revise plans. The humans had another advantage that confounded the Dominion. They learned incredibly fast. After losing 3 ships to a particular Dominion tactic, the humans never fell for it again. They studied every engagement, shared information instantly across all their forces, and adapted their methods. What worked against humans in one battle failed in the next. Doctor revolutionized human combat medicine. She was a civilian doctor before the war, but when conflict began, she volunteered for military service. Other species treated wounded soldiers based on triage, save those most likely to survive, let the others die. Refuse this approach. "We do not leave anyone behind," she declared. "Every human life matters. We will find a way to save them all." Her medical teams went into active combat zones to rescue wounded soldiers. They developed new techniques for emergency surgery under fire. They used experimental treatments that other species considered too risky. The survival rate for wounded human soldiers was 94%. For comparison, the Dominion's rate was 67%. This had an unexpected effect on morale. Human soldiers fought with ferocity because they knew their comrades would never abandon them. They took risks that seemed suicidal, but somehow they survived because their entire system was designed around saving lives rather than accepting casualties. Intelligence officer Wu coordinated what humans called psychological warfare. L found this concept fascinating and disturbing. Wu did not just gather intelligence about enemy positions and capabilities. He studied Dominion psychology, culture, and individual commander personalities. Then he exploited them. When Dominion ships approached a human position, they received broadcasts showing Dominion casualties from previous battles. Not propaganda, just facts. Names of the dead, images of destroyed ships, messages from Dominion prisoners saying they were treated well and asking why the war continued. The Dominion considered this dishonorable. Wu considered it effective. "We understand fear," he explained to L during an interview. "We evolved with it. Every human knows fear intimately, so we know how to use it, not to break our enemies but to make them question why they are fighting." The Dominion's military doctrine was based on honor, glory, and strength. They expected enemies to fight with similar values. The humans fought with whatever tools worked. They used ambushes, traps, false information, and psychological pressure. They attacked supply lines instead of military targets. They broadcast peace offers to enemy soldiers while fighting their commanders. It was not how war was supposed to be fought, but it was devastatingly effective. By month 3, the Dominion controlled 3 star systems. Humanity held only one, 5, which had become a symbol of human resistance. But the Dominion was bleeding resources and morale, while human resistance seemed to grow stronger. The turning point came at the Battle of Horizon Station. A small human force of 200 soldiers defended a strategic location against a Dominion army of 10,000. Every calculation said the humans would be overrun in hours. The Dominion commander, a veteran named N, was certain of victory. The humans held for 14 days. They used every trick they knew. They collapsed tunnels to slow the Dominion advance. They broadcast false communications to confuse enemy coordination. They rigged traps that wounded rather than killed, forcing the Dominion to dedicate resources to caring for injured soldiers. Lieutenant Jin commanded the defense. He was a survivor of 5's initial blockade, now hardened by months of combat. He rotated his soldiers constantly, ensuring everyone got rest, food, and time to recover. He kept morale high with what seemed like stubborn optimism. "We are not holding until reinforcements arrive," he told his troops. "We are making the Dominion pay for every hour they waste here. Every day they fight us is a day they are not fighting elsewhere. We are the shield that protects others." The soldiers believed him. They fought with a determination that confused their enemies. When one position fell, they retreated to another. When ammunition ran low, they used improvised weapons. When communications failed, individual units made their own decisions that somehow still coordinated with the overall defense. By day 14, the Dominion had taken Horizon Station, but they had lost 4,000 soldiers doing it. The remaining human defenders had evacuated through hidden escape routes, taking their wounded with them, and stood in the ruins and felt no sense of victory. His forces were exhausted, his supplies were depleted, his soldiers were traumatized, and the humans were already regrouping somewhere else. "Remember 5" became the human battle cry, but it meant different things depending on context. Sometimes it was a call for vengeance, sometimes a reminder of resilience, sometimes simply an acknowledgement that humans did not forget their own. The Dominion started to fragment. Individual commanders began questioning orders. Supply officers wondered why they were spending so many resources on what was supposed to be a simple territorial claim. Soldiers wrote letters home asking what they were dying for. The Galactic Assembly watched with growing concern. Some species began quietly supporting humanity with intelligence, supplies, and diplomatic pressure on the Dominion. They did not do this out of love for humans, but out of recognition that the Dominion's power was based on fear, and fear was failing. L compiled his observations into regular reports. His superiors at the archival collective were fascinated by the data he was gathering. Humans wage war on multiple dimensions, he wrote. Physical combat is only one aspect. They fight psychologically, culturally, and morally. They make victory expensive and defeat temporary. They turn every battle into a lesson and every loss into motivation. Captain Sung, who had survived when his ship was destroyed saving an alien refugee convoy, became a hero to multiple species. His sacrifice proved that humans fought for principles, not just territory. Alien citizens started questioning why they were not defending the humans who had defended them. By month 6, the military situation had not changed much on paper. The Dominion still controlled more territory. They still had more ships. They still had better weapons. But something fundamental had shifted. The Dominion was fighting to win. The humans were fighting to survive. And as General One had understood from the beginning, those were very different motivations. "We do not need to destroy them," she explained in a strategy session that Elle observed. "We just need to make victory cost more than they are willing to pay. We need to make them question whether this world is worth the price." Elle understood then. The humans were not trying to defeat the Dominion militarily. They were making the war itself unbearable. They were weaponizing attrition, morale, and simple stubborn refusal to surrender. As the war entered its 7th month, Elle sent a new report to his superiors. It contained a single line that summarized everything he had learned. Other species fight to win. Humans fight to survive. There is a significant difference, and I believe it will determine the outcome of this conflict. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or numbers or strategy. It was their absolute unwillingness to give up, combined with a frightening creativity in finding new ways to make their enemies regret fighting them. Ambassador stood before the Galactic Assembly with a different kind of authority than he had possessed 7 months earlier. He was no longer asking for recognition or pleading for help. He was announcing humanity's intentions. "We are taking this war to the Dominion's home systems," he said calmly. "Not to destroy them, but to end this conflict on our terms." The assembly chamber erupted in shocked responses. The speaker tried to restore order. "You cannot invade Dominion space. They still have superior forces. This will only lead to more death." Now also serving as Fleet Admiral of the Human Forces, smiled slightly. "We have learned much about the Dominion in these months. We know their strengths. More importantly, we know their weaknesses, and we know something they do not know about themselves." "What is that?" asked the speaker. "That their people do not want to fight anymore." The offensive began 3 days later. Human ships appeared in Dominion border systems, but they did not attack military targets. Instead, they broadcast directly to civilian populations. Commander Sora led the special operations teams. She was small and quiet, the kind of person who could disappear in a crowd. But she was also brilliant at what humans called information warfare. Her teams infiltrated Dominion worlds not with weapons, but with transmitters. They hacked into local communication networks and began broadcasting messages, images of Dominion casualties, interviews with captured Dominion soldiers who spoke about good treatment, questions that seemed simple but were deeply subversive. "Why are you dying for this? What has the Dominion leadership sacrificed? How many more of your children will die for a single human colony?" The Dominion government tried to stop the broadcasts, but human technology was sophisticated and their operators were clever. For every transmitter shut down, 2 more appeared. Elle observed one such broadcast. It featured a Dominion soldier named who had been captured at Horizon Station. He spoke directly to the camera, his voice tired but not hostile. "I thought humans would kill me," said. "Instead, they gave me medical care. They fed me. They asked about my family. The human doctor who treated my injuries showed me pictures of her children. She told me she understood I was following orders just like she was. She asked me what I was fighting for. I could not answer. Can you? The broadcast ended with a simple message. This war serves no one but those who started it. Humans want peace. Do you? The effect was gradual but profound. Dominion citizens began questioning the war. Protests started on several worlds. Not violent protests, but gatherings where people simply asked their government to explain why they were still fighting. The Dominion military responded by tightening control, which only made the situation worse. People who had accepted authoritarian rule when it promised glory and strength now saw it as oppressive when it demanded sacrifice for an unclear goal. Meanwhile, the human military deployed what they called the swarm doctrine. Fleet Admiral explained it to Elle during a rare interview. The Dominion builds powerful ships that take years to construct and cost enormous resources. We build thousands of small, cheap drones that can be produced quickly. Quality versus quantity. Except our quantity is so overwhelming that quality cannot overcome it. The drones were barely more than engines, sensors, and explosives. Each one was individually weak, but they came in clouds of thousands, swarming enemy vessels like insects. Dominion ships could destroy hundreds of drones, but there were always more. And while the drones kept the enemy occupied, human warships attacked from unexpected angles. It was economically devastating for the Dominion. They spent enormous resources destroying cheap drones, while human shipyards produced replacements faster than they could be destroyed. Lieutenant Jin, now promoted after his defense of Horizon Station, led a mission that the new human approach to warfare. His team infiltrated a Dominion prisoner of war camp and freed not only human prisoners, but also Dominion soldiers who had been imprisoned by their own government for questioning orders. The freed Dominion soldiers told stories of their own people being punished for showing mercy or expressing doubt. These stories spread through Dominion space faster than any official propaganda could counter them. Dr. Haywon, who had been humanity's cultural liaison during peaceful times, now served as an advisor on what humans called moral warfare. She appeared in broadcasts directed at Dominion citizens, speaking not as an enemy but as someone genuinely concerned for their. "We do not hate you," she said in one memorable broadcast. "We hate what your government has forced you and us to do. We have studied your culture. We have read your literature and poetry. We know you value honor and strength. But is there honor in killing for no reason? Is there strength in following leaders who care nothing for your lives?" She paused, looking directly at the camera. Humanity has a saying, "The true measure of strength is choosing not to use it." Your people are strong. We respect that. But we ask you to be strong enough to demand peace from leaders who only understand war. The psychological impact was enormous. Dominion culture was based on concepts of honor and strength. Haywon reframed those concepts in ways that made continuing the war seem dishonorable and weak. Civil unrest grew in Dominion systems. Workers slowed production at military factories. Transport ships accidentally delayed deliveries. Nothing dramatic, but the cumulative effect was significant. The Dominion war machine began to sputter. And the commander who had started this conflict by blockading 5 found himself in an impossible position. He was a warrior, trained to respect strength and despise weakness. But the humans were demonstrating a form of strength he did not understand. They were stronger in defeat than the Dominion was in victory. He sent a private message to Admiral requesting a direct negotiation. Elle observed this meeting from a neutral location. "You fight without honor," and said, his voice heavy with frustration. Met his gaze calmly. "We fight to protect our people. Honor is important, but life is more important. Your tactics are cowardly." "Our tactics work. Is it cowardly to win?" And had no response. By Dominion standards, yes, human tactics were cowardly, but the results spoke for themselves. "What do you want?" and finally asked. "Unconditional peace," said. "The war ends. Your forces withdraw from all human space. War crimes trials for those who ordered attacks on civilian targets, and reparations for the damage done to 5. Impossible, the Dominion does not surrender. Then the war continues, said simply. And every day it continues, more of your people die while your government becomes weaker. How long before your own citizens demand new leadership? How long before other Dominion worlds rebel? He leaned forward. Commander, we can destroy your government without destroying your people. We would prefer not to. We would prefer peace. But we will accept either outcome. And left the meeting without agreement, but El saw something in his expression, doubt. The invincible warrior was beginning to question his own cause. 3 weeks later, the first Dominion world declared independence from central authority. Then another. Then 5 more. The Dominion government tried to suppress the rebellions, but their military forces were stretched thin fighting humanity. They could not wage war on 2 fronts. Some rebel worlds reached out to humanity for protection. Admiral accepted, but with conditions. We will protect you, but we will not rule you. Make your own choices. Build your own futures. We only ask that you commit to peace. The galaxy watched in amazement as the species transformed from victims to liberators. The Dominion Empire, which had seemed invincible for centuries, was fragmenting from within. The final blow came when the Dominion's largest shipyard workers went on strike. They refused to build more warships until the government explained why they were fighting a war that served no purpose except pride. When security forces tried to force the workers back to their jobs, the workers fought back, not with weapons but with the same tool humans had taught them, questions. Why are we building these ships? Who benefits from this war? How many more will die before someone admits this was a mistake? The Dominion government could not answer because there were no good answers. The war had started over a minor territorial dispute and had become a catastrophic mistake that no one knew how to end without losing face. And sent another message too. This time, his tone was different, not angry or frustrated but resigned. You have won, he said simply. Not through superior force, but through, I do not have words for it. You have made us question ourselves. You have turned our own people against us. You fight battles we did not know existed. The final Dominion fleet surrendered without firing a shot. The war was over. El recorded the moment for the archives. He noted the date, the location, the participants. But he also noted something that could not be, the look on human faces as they accepted the surrender. Not triumph or gloating, but relief and sadness for all that had been lost. They had won, but they mourned the cost. This, El realized, was perhaps the most human thing of all. They could wage war with terrifying efficiency, but they never forgot that war itself was a tragedy. The Galactic Assembly Chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from 47 species watched as Ambassador HFY stood before them to present humanity's peace terms. Many expected demands for territory, resources, or subjugation of the defeated Dominion. What they heard instead confused them more than any battle tactic humans had employed. We want 3 things, HFY said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. First, recognition of all current human territories and a guarantee of non-interference in our internal affairs. Second, trials for individuals who committed war crimes, conducted fairly with representatives from neutral species. Third, a reconstruction fund to rebuild damaged worlds, including Dominion worlds that suffered during the conflict. The assembly speaker's facial tendrils twitched with confusion. You want to help rebuild enemy worlds? They are not our enemies anymore, HFY said simply. The war is over, now we rebuild. El observed the negotiations over the following weeks with growing fascination. Where other species would have pressed their advantage, exploited their victory, or extracted maximum concessions, the humans seemed focused on creating lasting peace rather than temporary submission. Human medical teams, engineers and teachers deployed to former Dominion worlds. They brought supplies, technology, and expertise. They worked alongside former enemies to repair infrastructure, restore agriculture, and rebuild communities. Elle interviewed a Dominion citizen named on a world that had suffered significant damage during the war. She was elderly by her species standards, and she had lost 2 children in the fighting. "I expected the humans to punish us," said, her voice heavy with old grief. "Instead, they sent doctors to our hospitals and engineers to our power stations. A human teacher is helping our young ones understand the war and process their trauma. I do not understand them." "What do you think of humans now?" Elle asked. I considered the question carefully. "I think they are dangerous, not because they are cruel, but because they make you want to be better than you are. They defeated us, but they do not gloat. They help us, but they do not lord it over us. They show us what we could become, and that is more frightening than any weapon." This sentiment echoed across former Dominion space. The humans had not just won a war, they had challenged fundamental assumptions about how conflicts should end. Young, whose video diaries from Besieged 5 had inspired people across the galaxy, now led what humans called a reconciliation program. She was only 16, but she spoke with the kind of wisdom that came from surviving something terrible and choosing hope anyway. "We were all hurt by this war," she said in a broadcast to both human and Dominion audiences. "Humans and Dominion both lost people we loved. We both have scars, but scars prove we survived, and if we survived, we can build something better together." She organized exchanges where young people from human and former Dominion worlds could meet, talk, and learn from each other. It was small-scale work, nothing dramatic, but Elle recognized its long-term significance. These young people would grow up knowing former enemies as individuals rather than stereotypes. The trials for war crimes proceeded with careful attention to fairness. Humans insisted on evidence, testimony from multiple sources, and representation for the accused. Some Dominion leaders were convicted and sentenced, but others were acquitted when evidence did not support charges against them. Commander and faced trial for initiating the blockade of 5. He stood before the tribunal with the dignity of a warrior accepting judgment. Admiral at the trial. Commander and acted according to his culture's understanding of strength and honor. He believed the blockade would end quickly with minimal casualties. He was wrong, but that is not the same as criminal intent. I do not believe he should be punished for following what his entire society taught him was right. And was acquitted of war crimes but was removed from military command. Later, Elle observed a private meeting between and end. "Why did you speak for me?" and asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "Because you acted according to your understanding at the time," said. "You learned. You changed. Punishing people for learning seems counterproductive." "My people killed yours." "Yes, and that was terrible, but what purpose does revenge serve? I would rather you spend the rest of your life working for peace than rotting in a cell nursing hatred." And studied the human for a long moment. "Your species frightens me, Admiral, not because you are strong, but because you are merciful. Strength I understand. Mercy after victory, that is alien to me." "Then learn," said gently. "We are all still learning." The Galactic Assembly held a formal session to discuss humanity's status in galactic society. The debate was intense. Some species argued that humans were too unpredictable, too willing to break conventions. Others pointed out that humanity had demonstrated both power and restraint, which suggested maturity despite their youth as a spacefaring civilization. The representative, a philosophical species known for long-term thinking, spoke with quiet authority. "I have studied the humans extensively. They are not perfect. They make mistakes. They can be stubborn and frustrating, but they possess something we have lost, the ability to change rapidly while maintaining core values. They adapt without losing themselves. This is rare." The vote was close, but ultimately the Assembly granted humanity a seat on the Security Council. It was unprecedented for such a new species, but the war had proven that ignoring humanity was more dangerous than including them. Human starships began patrolling major trade routes, not as conquerors but as protectors. When pirates attacked a merchant convoy, human ships responded and drove them off. When a natural disaster struck a colony, human relief teams arrived within days. The galaxy was learning that humanity could be as committed to helping as they had been to fighting. L compiled his final report from his quarters on a space station orbiting Earth. He had spent nearly 2 years observing humanity, from their introduction to galactic society through their war and its aftermath. Now he needed to make sense of everything he had witnessed. He began writing, trying to capture the essence of what made humans unique. Humans call themselves weak because they care. They call themselves peaceful because they choose restraint. These self-assessments are inaccurate. Humans are neither weak nor inherently peaceful. They are adaptable, resilient, and possess an almost frightening capacity for both violence and compassion. He paused, considering how to explain what he had learned. Other species fight to win. Humans fight to survive. This difference is critical. Winning is about defeating an opponent. Surviving is about enduring until circumstances change. Humans do not need to destroy their enemies. They simply need to make victory cost more than it is worth. They are the only species I have observed that weaponizes hope itself. He thought about video diaries, about soldiers fighting for 14 days against impossible odds, about civilians singing songs while preparing for orbital bombardment. They face extinction and respond with defiance. They face war and respond with adaptation. They face defeat and respond with refusal to accept it as final. This makes them nearly impossible to truly defeat, because defeat requires acknowledgement, and humans seem genetically incapable of acknowledging that something is impossible. L reviewed footage from the war, from negotiations, from reconstruction efforts. A pattern emerged. Humans survived there through cooperation and adaptation. Earth was hostile in ways that shaped them fundamentally. They learned to work together because individuals could not survive alone. They learned to adapt because their environment changed constantly. They learned to endure because giving up meant death. He wrote about human emotional complexity, their ability to hold contradictory feelings simultaneously, to mourn enemies they killed, to show mercy to those who showed them none, to rebuild what they had destroyed. The universe fears humanity's might, but might is not their greatest power. Their greatest power is making others want to be better. They do not conquer through force, they transform through example. Former enemies become allies. Former hatred becomes understanding, not because humans demand it, but because humans demonstrate that another way is possible. L included personal observations, moments that statistics and military analysis could not capture. The human doctor showing pictures of her children to a captured enemy soldier. The admiral speaking in defense of the commander who had tried to destroy a human colony. The teenager leading reconciliation efforts between former enemies. I fear we may come to depend on humanity's strength, not because they are the most powerful species, but because they refuse to accept that problems are unsolvable. They see challenges where we see impossibilities. They see opportunities where we see dead ends. They see potential allies where we see permanent enemies. He wrote his conclusion carefully, knowing it would be controversial among his own people. Humanity will reshape galactic civilization. This is inevitable, not through conquest or force, but through their absolute refusal to accept that things cannot be better than they are. They survived Earth by being too stubborn to die, too cooperative to fail, and too hopeful to give up. These traits will carry them, and perhaps all of us, to futures we cannot yet imagine. L sent his final report to the archival collective and received confirmation of its acceptance. His observation mission was complete. He could return home now, resume his normal duties, document other species on other worlds. But he found himself hesitating. He had spent 2 years with humans, and they had changed him in ways he was still discovering. He looked at problems differently now. He questioned assumptions he had never thought to question before. Perhaps that was humanity's true gift to the galaxy. Not power or technology or military might, but the simple, revolutionary idea that things could always be better if you refused to accept that they could not be. A message arrived from Ambassador HFY. We are organizing an expedition to explore uncharted regions beyond current galactic borders. Would you like to join us? We could use someone with your experience, and frankly, you have been observing us for so long that you are practically human yourself. Considered the offer. By all logic, he should decline. His mission was over. His people expected him home. There was no professional reason to extend his time with humanity. But logic was not the only factor worth considering. He had learned that from humans. He sent his response, "I accept, when do we leave?" Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds, the impact of humanity's arrival continued to ripple outward. A new species had joined the community of stars, and nothing would ever be quite the same. The universe had feared humanity's might. Soon, it would learn to depend on their hope.